But no, thanks. Thanks. It's great to be here. My name's Garrett Ebling, and I live up in Andover on the far north side of Twin Cities. Kind of, if you look out the north side of my house, it's the country. So I often tell people I live in the south suburbs of Duluth, because that's kind of how it feels. I grew up most of my life in New Ulm, which is right down the road. And my mom happens to be here tonight. She lives in New Ulm, as do my grandparents. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, the bridge and the collapse and kind of how that affected me. If anybody has any questions, make a mental note in your head. Otherwise, I've got paper and pens up here too. If anybody wants to jot down some notes, you definitely can do that too. Just raise your hand and I'll come bring you some paper, pen, whatever. So yeah, so I was really excited to come here tonight and talk to you guys. I've talked to so many different kinds of groups. I've talked to fourth graders. I've talked to folks in an assisted living center. I've talked at conventions. I've talked to real estate property managers. You know, lots of different groups, and it's fun to talk to different people because it makes me kind of have to really think differently and how I can relate my talk. But with you guys, it was pretty easy to do because I really love history, and I assume that all of you really love history too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hanging out here, I suppose. So, anyways, I'm holding this, and you might wonder what this has to do with the bridge. And this is a branding iron, the initials JR on it. This belonged to my great-great-grandfather, John Resoft. And he was a civilian blacksmith. He came over from Germany in, I don't know, 1850s, I suppose. And went to work with the military and was sent out to Fort Ridgely. So he was a civilian blacksmith out at Fort Ridgely in August of 1862. I suppose some of you might know that corresponds to the Dakota Uprising. And so he was out there when the Dakota Indians made their last main push to try and reclaim their land. And at that time, it was a very perilous situation, especially for anybody who, actually for both Indians and whites. Perilous for the Indians in that they were facing desperate times. They had signed treaties, and the government had promised them annuities, and the annuities that they were supposed to get were showing up late, were not showing up at all, and the Indians relied on that money to be able to pay their debts. A lot of them had turned to farming, and they had bought a lot of things on credit, and they didn't have the money to pay for them, so the merchants would then reclaim their property, be it farming equipment or whatnot. So that was a problem. They also had just gone through a very harsh winter, and they had dealt with a lot of loss to their crops that summer due to insects. So there was a lot of angst and desperation on the part of the Dakota, especially when they knew that in the two sweep agencies, the lower and the upper in Granite Falls and Redwood Falls, that there was food stored up in the buildings, but the government would not release that to the Indians until they could pay the money that the government had and was slow to get them. So it was perilous for them. It was also perilous for the whites because of the desperation of the Dakotas. So my great-great-grandfather was thrust into that, and was at the fort when the Dakota, led by Little Crow, advanced on the fort. During there was two battles there between, on 2 days, August 20th and August 22nd, and in between there was a lot of rain, so that kept the Indians away for a day, and also allowed the fort to work on some necessary repairs from the battle the day before that ultimately strengthened the fort. The Dakota weren't able to take it. I believe 5 soldiers died during that attack. My grandfather was not one of them who survived. And today, his name is inscribed on a granite memorial at Fort Ridgely. So if you go to Fort Ridgely and go to the memorial, you'll see the name John Resoft on that tall piece of rock. But anyways, this is his, so it's just kind of cool to have and to hold. It's a tangible piece of metal from his life at a time that was probably life-altering for him. And, so I brought that along. As for me, this is a piece of metal that is life-altering for me as well. And like my great-great-grandfather, I survived a life-altering moment. This is a piece of the bridge. It's a section of the gusset plate. If anybody wants to touch this, they can do so. I also have a bolt. Do know that they are very rusty and your hands get a little bit dirty, so I brought these too. So if you want to touch history, just know it's a little messy.